For centuries, the devil has often been painted as, well, this sort of mindless, raging being, right? Just creating chaos for the sake of chaos. But what if we challenged that? Have we ever really considered Satan as an actual character in the biblical story? A character with real emotions, motivations, and maybe even specific goals?
That's exactly right. And if you start piecing together the fragments, the glimpses we get of Satan's personality from the source material, you can actually find some pretty convincing answers. And these answers, they reveal a character with objectives that are, well, far more understandable than you might think, which honestly deepens the entire biblical narrative quite profoundly.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then. Let's try to unpack two big questions. Why did Satan really rebel against God? And maybe connected, why does he seem to hate humanity so intensely? Where do our sources suggest we even begin to look for answers to this?
Well, to really get it, you have to go way, way back. We're talking before humans, eons ago. We learned that God created these glorious angelic beings first, heavenly species worshiping around his throne. But among all these angels, God apparently anointed one for a very special purpose. The texts describe him as a signet of perfection, blameless in his ways, just covered with precious gemstones, exalted to this really special place in heaven. God himself chose this angel to be a guardian cherub, a morning star, just shining brightly right there in God's presence. His name was Lucifer, which means bearer of light.
Wow, bearer of light, signet of perfection. That's quite the description. But it almost feels like a contradiction is coming, doesn't it? How does someone described as perfect and blameless, how did they start harboring, well, ambition? What did the account say about that even before God's next big move?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? The material suggests even though he was, the very top of the angelic hierarchy, Lucifer felt he deserved even more. And his ambition wasn't just about power, it was specific to exalt himself above his angelic brethren and become like the Most High. The key thing here seems to be that this wasn't like an overnight switch. Lucifer served blamelessly until God made a decision that, well, changed everything.
Okay, so what was that decision? The one that triggered this change?
God decided to create again, this time a physical universe. The angels, apparently, they marveled at the creation of light, the stars. They sang praises as he made plant life, the land. They rejoiced watching him form the beasts, the fish, the birds. Everything was good. But then on the sixth day, God made what some texts call his most controversial decision, creating mankind. And right then, God says, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion.
In our image, let them have dominion. It's huge. But what was so special about humanity, according to the sources, something the angels couldn't achieve? And how did Lucifer, Mr. Bearer of Light, react to this divine vision for these new creatures?
This is where it gets really interesting. Humanity.
Oh.
Yeah, they seemed feeble, vulnerable, especially compared to the angels, but they were uniquely loved, appreciated by God. God had this grand vision to crown this pathetic little race of creatures with glory and honor, to bring them near him, make them his own possession, for them to eventually get new perfect bodies, become heirs to his kingdom, inherit eternal life, spiritual rewards, dominion in heaven. And here's the kicker. A plan where they would ultimately become like the Most High.
Okay, wait. So Lucifer, who already sees himself as, the cream of the crop, he's suddenly looking at these fragile humans and hearing they're going to become like the Most High, the very thing he wanted. I can imagine the rejoicing in heaven you mentioned, but underneath that, Lucifer must have been feeling something quite different. Resentment.
Exactly. Resentment seems to be the right word. He started questioning it. Why create a new species to worship him when the angels were already doing it perfectly? But it went deeper than that, fueling his unease. God's plan wasn't just about worship. God planned on giving the world to come, not to the angels, but to humans. He even planned to send angels to serve humans as servants. And ultimately, humans would even get the authority to judge Lucifer and his angelic brethren. Imagine hearing that.
Judge him. Wow. So Lucifer, this brilliant morning star, suddenly sees this, well, from his view, insignificant human race. Not just getting special treatment, but being elevated above him, given privileges far beyond the angels. It must have felt incredibly unfair, deeply unjust. And this perceived injustice, this is what sets the stage for his cunning plan, right?
Yeah.
What was the objective there?
His strategy was quite calculated based on what we can piece together. Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Lucifer seems to have identified weaknesses there. And the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that became his opportunity. A simple question followed by a simple lie. And boom, humanity falls. He basically demonstrated right there to God and all the angels just how easily these favorite creatures could be led astray. But the objective wasn't just random chaos, it was specific. Prove humanity was incapable of fulfilling God's design for them. Prove they weren't worthy of inheriting eternal life or creation. And ultimately, get God to basically admit he made a mistake, annihilate humanity, bless the angels instead. And it was like this huge cosmic wager, not just mindless evil.
And the fallout from that wager was immense. After humanity's fall, God finds wickedness in Lucifer's heart. He's cast out of heaven, loses his status, his wisdom gets corrupted. But what's really striking is that he didn't fall alone, did he? The narrative suggests that because God was so set on exalting humanity and Lucifer had just proven how easily they failed, a whole third of the angels were actually convinced they deserted God and joined the rebellion. That's the moment Lucifer, the guardian cherub, effectively dies. And Satan, the adversary, the accuser of mankind, is born.
And with that new name, Satan, came a new role, a relentless one, to accuse mankind day and night, pointing out every sin, every failure to live up to God's image. See, Satan knew that if humanity kept sinning, God's own justice would eventually demand their destruction, which would prove Satan right all along. The blessing should have stayed with the angels, but right at the beginning, after the fall, God had this unexpected response. Adam and Eve, they ate the fruit, they became sinners, they were ashamed, they ran, they hid. But instead of just destroying them for this betrayal, God sought them out. He actually made clothing to cover them. He performed the first sacrifice for them.
That act of mercy, right when humanity was at its absolute lowest, it seems almost to fly in the face of the very justice Satan was counting on, doesn't it? How did that unexpected grace change Satan's strategy, or maybe his argument?
Well, it gave Satan a new angle, actually. A powerful argument against God himself. He can now argue that God's justice was, well, compromised, softened by this grace towards humans, meaning eventually God would have to destroy them anyway to remain just. The damage was done, in Satan's view. So from then on, Satan's life's work became embodying that dual title, tempter and accuser, tempt Eve's descendants to sin, then immediately accuse them of being failures when they did. His goal remained: ensure not one single human could live up to God's glorious design, make failure inevitable.
And the sources, they really show this playing out, don't they? Satan's sabotage just continues, generation after generation, until we get to the point where God saw how great human wickedness had become, that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time on earth. The text even says, God regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled on earth. So he floods the world, kills every human except Noah's family. In that moment, it must have seemed like Satan had finally won the first round, right? Achieved part of his objective. I mean, getting God to regret his creation. That's a chilling validation for Satan's whole argument.
It certainly looks that way. A major victory from his perspective. He'd proven humanity's fragility, maybe even God's vulnerability to their corruption. It must have reinforced his conviction that his rebellion was justified. But yet again, God's mercy steps in. He didn't completely abandon them. He saved Noah. He relented from wiping them out forever. So while Satan might have felt vindicated, God still didn't follow through with complete annihilation. Satan probably figured, okay, if I just keep this pressure up, eventually God will have to destroy them completely. Until a man named Job came along, and Job offered a glimpse of something different.
Job. Okay, so what made Job so significant in this ongoing cosmic battle?
Well, the sources describe this scene maybe 400 years after the flood. All the angels are presenting themselves before God, and Satan is right there with them. He'd been roaming the earth, doing his usual thing, tempting, accusing. But God points out Job, calls him blameless and upright, the greatest man of the East. Oh, Job was apparently very devout, even offered sacrifices just in case his kids had sinned in their hearts. He genuinely tried to live righteously. He seemed to uphold God's image much better than others, but Satan naturally disputes it. He argues Job's faith isn't in God, it's just in the blessings God gave him. Take away the blessings, Satan says, and Job will surely curse him to his face. And God agrees to the test. Basically allows Satan to test Job within limits. A cosmic wager unfolds.
And the test was brutal. Job lost everything. Possessions, destroyed, his family, his servants all killed in these tragic ways except his wife. Just utter devastation. Unimaginable loss. Yet, and this is the crucial part, instead of running from God, instead of cursing him like maybe his ancestors did, Job didn't sin by charging God with wrongdoing. He stayed steadfast through it all.
Wow. We've covered a lot of ground here. We started by questioning that simple image of the devil, and we've really explored how the sources present him as, well, a far more complex character, understandable motivations, even if they're dark ones. We've traced his journey from Lucifer, the shining signet of perfection, to Satan, the relentless adversary of mankind.
Exactly. And what emerges is this constant tension, isn't it? You have Satan laser focused on proving humanity's unworthy, pushing for their annihilation. And then you have God repeatedly showing mercy, clothing Adam and Eve, holding back after the flood. And then Job's incredible endurance, standing firm against Satan's worst attacks. So what does it all mean when you put it together? We see this relentless accuser, driven by what he sees as injustice, actively working to make humanity fail. But through that very struggle, from that adversarial viewpoint, we also get this glimpse of God's unwavering commitment to humanity,
Right.
even when it looks like it bends the rules of strict justice.
And what's so fascinating, I think, is how this challenges us to think beyond just simple good versus evil. It paints this picture of huge cosmic stakes where one powerful being's jealousy, his sense of being wronged because of humanity, fundamentally shapes the whole story. It's not just rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's rooted in this perceived cosmic unfairness from his point of view, driving this relentless campaign.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on. Considering Satan's unwavering goal to prove humanity is unworthy, what do you think that continuous thread of God's mercy, the one we see highlighted from Adam and Eve's, fall right through to Job's endurance? What does that mercy ultimately reveal about the real nature of dominion? Or maybe about the deepest meaning of being made in God's image? Something to think about.